Hello and welcome everyone. Welcome to my channel, the Garden City Project. My name is Greg Holenstein and I'm a landscape architect. In this episode, we are going to talk about the value of a natural environment and especially the value of gardens. So why is it important to know if gardens or natural environment has a value? Like on the world, everything has a value, or at least we as humans, we give them a value. And the same goes with natural environment and with gardens. And for this topic, I want to tell you a story. When I was starting to studying as a landscape architect, first, I didn't really saw a value in gardens or at least in ornamental gardens and in natural environment because I saw only a value when it's used for food production. And I'm really honest with you, that was my point of view at that time when I first started my studying. I only saw the value in gardens or in the natural environment when it was used for food production, and everything else I didn't really saw a value, and for me it was difficult to saw a value. Our job as landscape architect was to design an environment, to design a garden, to design a park, and to design outdoor environment. And for me at that time, I didn't saw a value in designing such things because I thought, well, why does it have to look nice? What is the value in that? And of course, over the years, I changed my point of view. I was learning a lot of things and I was working in this area, and so I learned a lot of things, and I want to share this knowledge with you in this episode. First of all, I want to have a look at the value itself. Like I was telling you before, like everything on the world, we as humans, we give them a value. And some things we give more value, and some things we give less value. And not everything can be measured in monetary terms. For example, a relationship or love, we can't measure in money. It's a different measurement. And so the question is, what makes a value? And what makes a value is the purpose. Everything that serves a certain purpose, which is useful for us, we give him a value. Simple as that. But it's not always easy to find a certain purpose for things, to detect the purposes. And so in this episode, I want to focus on the purposes of green environment and especially of gardens. The first purpose is simple and easy. It's just the production of food. And like I was telling you in the start of my video, when I was younger, I only saw this purpose in gardens and in natural environment. And still, it's a very important purpose. I mean, like it's the most important thing to survive. That's why it was easy to detect this purpose, because we need food to survive. And in early years, like people had their gardens only for food production, because in early days of human history, there was always a scarcity of food. And so people had to use every work they had and every means they had to produce food and to feed their families. And on those days, only the rich and wealthy were able to have like ornamental gardens, and these were very few people at that time. The most part of the people was very busy with feeding themselves and feeding their families. Luckily, today we are able to produce enough food to feed ourselves, like with our modern means of production and with modern fertilizer and all this stuff. We are able to produce so much food that we don't have a scarcity anymore, at least in the wealthier countries. And don't understand me wrong, that doesn't mean that there are not people on this world suffering from hunger. And this is absolutely true. There are a lot of people suffering from hunger in many countries all around the world. But the major problem about this is not the production of food, it's distribution of food. It's a logistic problem. So the problem is not the production, because we are able to produce more than enough food for all the people around the world. At least in theory, we would be able to feed the world. And now we come to the second purpose, and that is the representation. And as I was telling you before, like in the early days, only the rich and wealthy people could afford ornamental gardens, or the very wealthy lords and kings, they could have like their whole parks around their castles. Nearly all old castles, they have like a surrounding garden, or they have a surrounding park around them, and this makes them also very beautiful. And all those big gardens and those parks, they serve the purpose of representation mainly. And even more today, also people that are not extremely wealthy can afford a nice ornamental garden. Like we see that in many countries, that people put a lot of effort in a garden to have a nice garden and to have a nice surrounding. But this is not only the case for private gardens. Like we see in many cities, we see beautiful places and we see beautiful landscapes. And those cities invested a lot of money to make them beautiful. And this has also the purpose of representation. And you might think now, well, representation is kind of useless because they just invest a lot of money. Like some countries, they build big monuments and they invest a lot of money, but it's kind of useless. But that's not the case. If we look closer to that, this representation brings them a lot of benefits. For example, tourism. A lot of people go to visit like special places which are very beautiful. This attracts a lot of people, a lot of tourists. But not only, it also attracts or can attract investors. If someone, a city or some stakeholder invests a lot of money in something, he builds a monument or he builds a beautiful park, a beautiful building, whatever, for the purpose of representation, investors are more likely also to invest their money there because he has invested himself. So representation creates a kind of trustworthiness, so that other people are also more likely to invest in something if you yourself have invested in that. Does this make sense for you? For me, it makes clearly sense, because if we look at that, everyone is investing in representation. At least when you care about your body, when you care about the way you look, you also care about the representation of yourself. And with the gardens and the landscape, it's more or less the same. Like you invest that something looks nice and it represents you. Now we come to the most important purpose, and that is the emotional, spiritual one. And this part is not very easy to describe, but when we are surrounded by nature, we feel better. We feel the nature. We feel like a connection to the nature. Like if we are chilling in a nice garden, or if we are chilling in a park, in a nice park in a city, we feel like the atmosphere, like the natural atmosphere affects our emotion in a positive way. A garden, a nice meditation garden, can bring us calm, confidence, and also a spiritual connection. A spa area or a wellness area that is integrated into a garden can bring us much more benefit, like for well-being and for relaxing, than it would be without the surrounding nature. The same effect you have when you are walking through a forest. Like, have you ever walked through a forest and you have felt the calm and the connection to the nature? Compare that to when you are walking through a city where there is just asphalt and concrete. It's a completely different atmosphere. And now we are coming to a central question. Why does a natural environment or a garden make us feel better? And one of the major reasons is because we as humans, we evolved in nature. Like the most part of our evolution, we were spending completely in nature. We were spending the 99% of the time just in nature. And so we as humans, through our evolution, we have a connection to nature. We feel much better when we spend our time in nature. On the other hand, if we spend too much time inside a building, far from nature, we feel kind of uncomfortable. And it can also negatively affect our mental health if we have to spend too much time inside a building and if we don't go out to the nature. Now we come to the conclusion of this episode. A garden can be anything. It can be a plain production ground for fruit and vegetables. It can be a nice place to hang out and chill. It can be a place of power and representation. But it can also be a unique spiritual place that brings us calm, peace and confidence and benefits our emotional mental health. And in my opinion, that's the biggest benefit a garden can provide. And this cannot directly be measured in monetary terms. But as you may well know, everything on this world has a price. And the more work and knowledge you invest in something, the more it costs. That's absolutely obviously, of course. And in my opinion, it's worth to invest in gardens and green spaces. Of course I'm saying this because I'm a landscape architect and that's my job. But nevertheless, I think there is a huge benefit that a well-designed and well-overthought garden or a green space can bring to the people, a benefit to the people. A garden or a green space in a city can provide much more benefit for the people that can be seen on the first glance. That's why I made this video about this topic, that you can also see the benefits that the garden or a green space can provide for its people. So this is the end of this episode. I hope you could learn something. If you liked it, press the like button, leave me a comment here and see you next time. Bye!